Pokemon Scarlet and Violet gave us one of the weirdest Pokemon in the Pokemon franchise, and it irks me to my core. Let's talk all about it. Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we are talking about Tandemaus and Maushold. These are two different Pokemon. They're in the same evolutionary line. Tandemaus evolves into Maushold, and these Pokemon are just a little different than normal. So first off, let's talk about how. Obviously, the first thing you notice is looking at the base stage, Tandemaus, these are two Pokemon in one. Now, this is not, in fairness to these little guys, this is not unheard of. I mean, you can see this going all the way back to Gen 1. Kangaskhan is depicted with a little baby Kangaskhan in its pouch that's even, kind of is brought to the forefront when it Mega Evolves. You have, these are just off the top of my head, Dugtrio, 3 Diglett, Magneton is 3 Magnemite. Slowbro is literally a Slowpoke that has its tail bitten by a Shelter, and it becomes Slowbro, and so its tail is a Shelter. So it's not unheard of. Phalanx is very recent, and I think it's the closest thing to Maushold, where it's like literally 6 Pokemon in one. But Maushold and Tandemaus, I think it's just the most in your face, because, the base stage, it's 2 of them, and then when it evolves, there are no design changes at all, right? And it just literally, they get 2 little babies. But, like, the mouse itself doesn't change at all. And so that actually is, I guess, where what I'm wanting to know here. So we know that Phalanx, when they separate, they are called there's the leader, and then the other 5 are called the brass. So, like, we have them separated into parts. We know which each one is called. So, if your Phalanx separated, you'd know, oh, okay, that one's the brass, that one's part of the brass, that one's part of the brass, that's the leader. You'd know that. With Slowbro, we actually know that when a Shelter, if for whatever reason, it detaches from the Slowbro, then they just devolve. So, that Slowbro is now a Slowpoke. And that Shelter is now back to being a little Shelter doing its little Shelter things, whatever that may entail. Likewise, a Dugtrio is clearly 3 Diglett. So if they separated, I imagine that it would just be Diglett. Magneton, if they separated, I imagine it would just be Magnemite. But it becomes weird with Tandemaus and Maushold because the base stage is Tandemaus. It's the 2 of them. So I'm assuming because we see Mouse, M-A-U-S, in both Tandemaus and in Maushold, I am assuming that one mouse is called a mouse. It's called M-A-U-S. Just mouse. That would be the name of that Pokemon. Yet, it's interesting to me that it's not one of those. Like, that's not a Pokemon. The one is not a Pokemon. It seems to be born with a pair, which is actually kind of where we get into a much darker discussion that I'm going to save for later about what this Pokemon line implies. But yeah, I guess what I'm wanting to know is if I walk up to... Look, I'm not advocating for animal cruelty. I'm a big animal guy. Mice and rats are not my favorite animal. I will be honest about that. But I still would never want anything horrible to happen to them, right? I'm not for, like, torturing animals or nothing. Like, there are ways to kill or exterminate an animal that I don't agree with. I think they're too inhumane. But if, hypothetically, I shoot a Tandemaus in the face and it dies, and one of them dies, and so I'm left with the other one, what happens? What happens? Does that one die too because it's, like, soul linked to that other mouse? Or does immediately, like, just pop, another one appears? The Pokemon Company, because obviously they're not gonna want to get into the birds and the bees, right? They do this thing a lot, right? Like, they're like, we don't know how this egg got here, but your Pokemon was holding an egg, like, they do that. So, maybe that's just what happens as another one pops up. Maybe an egg just does appear. Maybe Pokemon don't reproduce in that way. It's a fantasy game. That could be the case. But I say all this to say I'm confused. Then, like, with Maushold, you have a 3 family and a 4 family one, and I'll get into why that's confusing. So first off, with Maushold, the interesting thing here is, again, no design change, just some kids appear. In fact, this is even touched on in an anime episode of Pokemon Horizons. Some very slight spoilers. It's not even spoilers for the series, it's just spoilers for this one episode that's a filler. But they find a Tandemaus and like one of them, and so not the pair, And Molly's like, oh, this is a Tana mouse. Its pair is missing. We need to help it find it. So they do. They help it find it. And turns out it doesn't just have a pair. It has kids as well. So it turns out it was not a Tana mouse. It was a Maushold. And even Molly goes, oh my gosh, it was a Maushold this whole time. I didn't even consider that as a possibility. That's crazy. So, you know, you see this Pokemon literally is so identical that Molly and even the Pokedex, when Liko scanned it, could not identify that it was a Maushold. It thought it was a Tana mouse, but nope, turns out it was a Maushold because it had kids. So yeah, what I'm wondering is, you know, first off, the 3 segment, because the kids got to grow up at some point, and I'm assuming that's how you create more Tana mouse, right? Like, eventually those little kids in the Maushold will grow up and will go off on their own and be Tana mouse, and this will make the parents devolve back into Tana mouse themselves, and then they'll reproduce and have, you know, kids and be a Maushold again, you know, and the kids will go and do the same. I'm assuming that's how they reproduce. That makes the most sense to me. But like with the 3 families, does that one mouse, the little baby mouse, have to go find another mouse? And there's tons of memes about this too, right? Like, I've seen one that, like, they don't have kids and the kid dies and they, like, called it mouse carriage or something like that, and it was normal ghost. Obviously, Pokemon's never going that route, and I don't think it should. But it's a meme, but it is one that kind of poses an interesting question. Like, what happens if a kid dies? Do they devolve? And again, I'm assuming these kids grow up to become Tana mouse, which, by the way, gets us into a really dark spot with this Pokemon that you know, perhaps we don't want to think about. But if we were to assume that Tana mouse, when it evolves, it's because the 2 Tana mouse had kids. And by the way, Tana mouse is genderless, but if you look, they're clearly trying to, like, show gender with these 2. Like, if you notice, the 2 mouse, one of them has, like, a line across its chest, and one of them has a line across its legs, like it's wearing pants. So I'm assuming, like, that's supposed to represent the female and the male, right? And then, so they have kids, and so they reproduce, and that is how we get Maushold. Well, then the kids, because usually Maushold is a 4 family, like it's not a 3 family, it's a 4 family. So then the kids leave on their own and become Tana mouse. And, you know, again, I'm assuming that the parents then devolve to Tana mouse themselves because they don't have kids anymore. At least, you know, not like little baby kids in their household, in their Maushold. But these kids, if we're assuming that because it's a family of 4 and the 2 kids go off together, well, they're siblings, but they're also Tana mouse. So are we to assume that Tana mouse are incestual? Now, that's obviously disgusting and all that, but it is actually, in a way, I kind of applaud the Pokemon Company for doing that, because that is actually very accurate to real-life mice and rats. Real-life mice and rats, they, you know, they don't really have laws against incest, and they don't really care about it either, you know, so they will sometimes reproduce with their siblings. I remember a Friends clip about that where Mike had to explain that to Phoebe about rats.
What happens when they mate? There are hundreds of them.
Mate? They're all brothers and sisters.
Yeah, not such a problem with rats.
So yeah, it's a gross little line. It exists. Nobody can take that away. It's here. I've made a video on it now, talking about my thoughts and feelings on it. I'm not a huge fan of this Pokemon. You know, aside from the weirdness of it, it's a very simple design, and I personally don't care for super simple designs like that. However, there's a big market for it. You know, you all know my friend Soul Silver Art. He's a big fan of these guys. I don't know if he watches this video. Hey, Soul, if you watch this video, comment on it and let me know what you think of them now that you know that that's a brother and sister who had a baby together. And yeah, how do you wrap this up? Like, subscribe, comment. If y'all like this video, I'll do these more, because I know this isn't like a theory video. Yeah, there's some theories in it, but it's like a, hey, I saw this and I'm frightened by it video. And I'll make more of these if y'all like them. I wanted to kind of rant about that. Let me know your thoughts on Tandem and Maushold in the comments below. What happens when I shoot one in the head, and does the other die? Does it immediately find a new pair? Is it a mouse, just M-A-U-S? What happens? Oh my god. Oh. I'll see all of you later.